This is the Demo Man, and he has one of the hardest achievements to get in Team Fortress 2, which is the Tartan Spartan. With a total of only 6.7% of all TF2 players having this achievement, to complete it, you need to deal a whopping 1 million blast damage to your enemies. Now, for a highly skilled demo, this may seem like a reasonable task to complete, but me? Well, I haven't played TF2 in about 5 years, and not only that, I've also never played Demo Man before. So I thought, what better way to jump back into the game than to challenge myself to one of TF2's hardest achievements. Also, to make things even harder, I only have 7 days to complete it. You see, I'm getting a puppy in about a week's time, and I need to finish the challenge before this happens. So not only was I trying to get one of the hardest achievements in the game, I was now also on a time limit. With that said, let's find out if I can get 1 million damage as Demo Man in under a week. Now for this challenge, we have a few rules that we need to go over. Rule 1, I can only play Demo Man until this achievement is unlocked, which means I can't switch classes for the entirety of this challenge, not even to take a break. Rule 2, the challenge needs to be completed in under a week, because as I mentioned before, I'm getting a puppy, and I won't really have much time to play TF2 after that happens, at least for the next little while anyways. I will also be choosing a new loadout every 100,000 damage, pretty much until we run out of guns to use. Then from there, I will find the loadout with the highest damage output, and then use that for the rest of the challenge, which brings us to rule 3. Once a loadout is selected, it is locked in for the next 100,000 damage. So no matter what happens or how I feel about a particular loadout, I have to commit to it until we reach the next 100,000 damage milestone. And rule 4, no achievement or strange farming servers are allowed. Well, obviously. Also, throughout the video, my damage will be tracked using this achievement tracker in the top left corner, so you can easily follow along at how much damage I have at any given time. Now that we got all that out the way, let's get into the challenge. To start off the challenge, I decided for our first loadout to just go with completely stock demo, pretty much so that I could refer back to this loadout later on in the video. 1, to see how I was progressing in terms of skill, and 2, to give us a good idea of how different guns compare to the stock loadout. Now with my loadout selected, it was time for me to load into my first game as Demo Man. To start us off, I joined a casual match on Viaduct and got right into the challenge. My first kill was on this poor engineer trying to set up his equipment, and this marked the first of many kills yet to come. The challenge had begun, and this was definitely going to be an interesting week, that's for sure. It wasn't long after this that I was killed by this heavy, and the game decided it was a good idea to rub it in my face that 1 kill is the most I've ever gotten in a life as demo. Thanks, Valve. Now, I was doing okay for the next little bit of the game until I came across a pyro that looked a little suspicious. So I decided to check and see if he was a spy by shooting stickies at him, except I couldn't hit my sticky shots, and then the inevitable happened. And that was my first interaction with a spy as a demo, and they were going to prove to be very difficult to deal with for the foreseeable future. But the spy wouldn't be the only class I would struggle to deal with in this challenge. With classes like the Pyro and Scout, I also felt like I had a lot of room for improvement before I could kill them efficiently. And that improvement, yeah, that was gonna take a bit of time. Oh, Scout! Oh my god, dude. Oh no, not this again. Oh my fucking god, I got fished to death. Oh, Pyro! I'm already dead. What? Oh my god. Not a scout, please. Oh my god, bro. Dude, oh my fucking god. Scouts are going to be the death of me. With that being said, I was improving at countering classes at closer ranges as I progressed more throughout the challenge. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's get back to our first couple matches as demo. After my first game, I then joined another match on Viaduct. And other than spending the first half of the match dying to snipers, this one actually went a little better than my previous game. And at the end of it, I managed to get 3,200 damage. So after my first 2 matches, I had roughly 4,700 damage, which took me about 30 minutes to get. Now, with that, if we were to get 1 million damage at this speed, the challenge would take us roughly 106 hours to complete. And that is definitely not an ideal time at all. At this rate, I would have to play TF2 for at least 15 hours a day for the next week to even get close to finishing this challenge in time, which is just simply not possible. I need to pick things up pretty quickly if we're going to get anywhere with this achievement. The next couple of games were a little better though. However, I was still struggling to kill enemies at close ranges, but I was getting a little better at keeping my distance in fights and doing some more damage by ticking away at players' health from afar. I also managed to get the most damage I've had in a single life so far, and I even ended game 3 with 550 more damage than I had in my previous match. So I was definitely showing some signs of improvement already. Speaking of improvement, I also managed to get my first kill on a spy as a demo, which I was quite happy about. Oh, dude, that's gonna look so bad from now, and then look at me later in the video. I'm think that's good now, but like later on, I'm gonna think that was so bad. But shortly after, I was quickly reminded of how much improvement I still had to make. Stop! No! Oh my god, dude. However, in the next match on Dust Bowl, I did manage to pull off something I was not expecting to do this early into the challenge, which was double my previous best for the most damage I've got in one life. Yes, that's right. I somehow got over 1400 damage in a single life. Okay, well, I did have a pretty good way of getting copious amounts of damage in this game, and that was by holding the enemy team at their spawn, and by applying constant pressure to them, I was able to survive as long as I did. A few games after this, we had reached the 4-hour mark in our challenge, and had amassed close to 40,000 damage. At this speed, it would still take me another 96 hours to get this achievement. I desperately needed some way of getting my damage up, because getting games like this was not going to happen very often. So I did a little brainstorming, and I came to the conclusion that if I could move around the map a little faster to get to the action, I would be able to up my damage by a measurable amount. So I decided to give my friend Leg a call, who was willing to run me through a little lesson on sticky jumping.
You ready to sticky jump?
Yes, sir.
Was that good? Was that good?
Yeah, I got it. Now, I'm not going to make you sit here and watch me learn how to sticky jump. So to summarize, I spent a little while learning and practicing how to sticky jump and got it down enough to where I felt confident to start using it in public games. Thanks to Leg, I could now move around the map more freely and would be able to use this new skill to hopefully increase our damage output. Now, with that out of the way, I jumped back in and started grinding out my damage again. The next few games were going pretty smoothly as I was getting a little more comfortable with playing demo. I even managed to get my first ever sticky jump kill. Well, kind of. It wasn't pretty, but I was happy with it, alright? At this point, another hour had passed, and after about 5 hours into the challenge, I was sitting at 53,000 damage. So at this stage, I had about 89 hours remaining of the challenge, which is a slight improvement from our previous hour. So I was definitely starting to pick up a little more momentum. Now, after 5 hours in, I came to realize that I was spending a lot of time waiting around for respawn timers, and I knew that there had to be some solution to this problem. Well, obviously not dying as much would help, but that's hard to do when you're absolute ass cheeks at demo. So I went for the next best thing, Skyle's 24/7 2-fort servers. For those of you that don't know about Skyle servers, they're a server that is always set to the map 2-fort with 0 respawn timers, meaning I can get back into the action almost instantly and would have a map that I could get familiar with for consistent results. This was going to be a pretty big game changer for me. Don't worry though, I won't be staying on this map the whole time throughout the challenge. I'm not an absolute psycho. I'm definitely going to have to take a break from playing 2-fort. I'm simply just going to be throwing this map into rotation, so hopefully I can get some consistent PvP as demo. Now, with that being said, after a little time on Skyle, I was already seeing some signs of improvement. For example, I was getting a little better at handling scouts in close range fights. By waiting for them to run over my stickies, I found that it was the most effective way to keep them either far enough away from me so that I could do some damage at a safer distance, or if they do decide to come closer, well, that good old right click will clean them right up. You could do nothing there, buddy. But this was something I still needed a lot of experience to perfect, and it definitely wasn't at a perfect level just yet. And for pyros, well, they continue to cook me like a goddamn Sunday roast. Oh, okay, bro. Pyro. But other than dealing with pyros and scouts, day one was going pretty smooth at this point. I even managed to get the most kills I've ever had in a single life as demo. We're now at 7, boys. Unfortunately though, watching back through this footage, I've realized one crucial mistake I've made in most of these clips, and that is neglecting the grenade launcher. There are plenty of opportunities where I could use it, but instead I opt to reload the sticky launcher and continue firing stickies, which ends up taking me a much longer time to do. But that being said, I will get better at this as time goes by. Well, you'd hope so. As for my damage output, in the past couple hours, I managed to rake in a total of 50,000 damage, bringing us to just over 100,000 damage. And on that note, I'd been playing TF2 for 8.5 hours at this point. So I decided to call it a night and pick up the challenge again tomorrow. To recap day one, I spent a total of 8.5 hours playing to reach 100,000 damage. At this stage in the challenge, we had another 76.5 hours left. That's a decent change from where we first started, but I still had to speed things up. So let's see if we could do that with our next loadout. I started off day 2 by choosing our next loadout, which we will be using for the next 100,000 damage. I decided to go with the Iron Bomber, the Quickie Bomb Launcher, and the Pain Train for our next 100k. That's my loadout for the next 100,000. I'm gonna add some cosmetics this time around though. Let me see what we got here. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I'm looking fucking schmick. Now that I had my loadout selected, I was ready to jump back into the challenge. The first thing I noticed a few minutes into my first game of the day was that the shape of the grenades from the Iron Bomber felt a lot easier to use for me. Oh. Okay, I can see the hype with the round grenades. It's a lot nicer. I do appreciate them. I know that this is pretty much the same weapon as the regular grenade launcher, but something about the round projectiles just made it feel slightly easier to hit my shots. I felt like I was a little more consistent when it came to hitting moving targets like scouts, but it was still far from perfect. Although this little change definitely made me feel a little more confident in my aim. After the first game of day 2, I decided it would be a good idea to jump on Scar's 2 Fort servers for a bit. Now, as I mentioned before, you will be seeing this server quite a bit. The main reason being that there's no respawn timers, but there was also one more reason. Spawn camping, baby. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Spawn killing is such a virgin move.
I think they're talking about me. The damage. The first hour of the day was going pretty smooth. I was getting a decent amount of damage pretty quickly, but there was one thing in particular that was holding me back, which was the fact that the Quickie Bomb Launcher only had 4 stickies compared to the regular Sticky Bomb Launcher's 8 projectiles. And with this, I found myself getting into fights quite often and not having enough ammo to finish them, just like this. Fuck. I'm just on 0 bullets, dude. That's real shit. I've got half the amount of bullets in this gun than I had in the other gun. So it's real hard with the sticky launcher. And yes, I know what you're thinking. Why not just switch weapons instead of reloading?
Switching to your pistol is always faster than reloading.
Well, remember, I'm terrible at demo, but I promise I'll get better at this as time goes on. I just wanted to mention this being a very limiting factor of this loadout, especially for a non-experienced demo like myself. After about another hour on Skiles 2 Fort, we managed to get another 20,000 damage, which I was quite pleased with. It definitely put some dent in the amount of damage I needed to get done for this day, to stay on track and finish our challenge. So I decided instead of driving myself insane by playing the same map for hours and hours on end, I'd switch back to regular old casual matchmaking for a little and see how I would do with this loadout on there. And on my first game back on casual, I almost hit a really good clip. Well, that went very well. It's just too bad I suck at hitting the detonate button on time still. With that being said though, throughout my time in these casual matches, I was actually starting to get more kills in a row and was able to stay alive a little longer in fights against multiple enemies. But there were still times where I would get a little too overwhelmed.
Nice. Kill the other one.
Yeah.
Nice. To your left.
Oh shit.
Oh.
I got fucking Girardi. Oh. What the hell was that? Okay, so there may be an elephant in the room we need to talk about here. Yes, I am playing on servers with random crits. And don't worry, I'm not going to sit here and debate about random crits with you. But I do want to mention crits in general, because they are a big contributor to damage in TF2. Using crits to give us as much of an edge as possible will definitely be a big help with this challenge, and will end up leading to some clips like this, where we can get heaps of damage in a matter of seconds. Whether it be from a crits krieg or just completely random, they will help give us a bit of a boost in damage throughout the challenge. Sometimes, as seen in this clip here, giving us multiple kills from just one hit. Oh, that's like 500 damage right there. Skyle also has random crits enabled. So with having a server that has 0 respawn timers and random crits, hopefully that can give us a bit of a helping hand to get this challenge done in time. Okay, now back to the current state of the challenge. I actually found myself disliking the Quickie Bomb Launcher, and even more so as the day went on. I felt like I was constantly reloading it after firing a few shots, which was throwing me off my timing on getting stickies down around enemies. So with the slight timing issue, I couldn't seem to get as many kills as I would have liked to so far. After about 10 hours into the challenge, we were sitting at 130,000 damage. So at this rate, we were going to take another 67 hours to finish the challenge. This is still not as fast as I need to be moving. I need to pick things up if I want to get this challenge done before I get my new puppy. But a couple hours later into our casual games, I seem to be getting a little better at hitting my shots with the Iron Bomber. Not to mention getting a little better at predicting enemy movement, which helped a lot when using the pretty limiting 4 stickies in the Quickie Bomb Launcher. Crits in these matches were also a big part of my damage output as well. I then decided to switch back to Skiles 2 Fort server and see how fast I could make up a bit more damage. At this point, we were sitting around 150k, so I thought I would sit in 2 Fort until I managed to get to the 200,000 mark, and it took me around 4 whole hours to finally get to 200,000 damage. So after around 14.5 hours, we had finally made it to our next 100,000 milestone. All right, boys, so I've got 200,000 damage so far. We're currently on hour 14.5. So far, so good. We're kind of tracking along, but it's time to change my loadout. I'm going to get a recommendation from Leg for a better loadout, because this one is just, it's been hard. I found this one really hard for some reason. Yeah, this is going to be interesting. I want to see what we can do with the next loadout, to be honest. I'm hoping it's better than this. And this next loadout would definitely be a lot stranger than our previous one. But first, let's recap what I've learned so far from this loadout we just used. First of all, I did end up getting better at timing my stickies, especially while being limited to only having 4 available. This limitation forced me to be more cautious with my sticky output, unless I wanted to get caught reloading my quickie bomb launcher in the middle of a fight. Even though I could launch stickies faster, it doesn't mean I had to. And because of this, my placement of stickies became more precise and more calculated than they previously were. As far as the iron bomber goes, well, I came to realize how much I prefer it over the regular grenade launcher. And yes, I'm aware that they're practically the same weapon, but something about those round grenades just made the gun feel nice to use. And maybe this is just my demo man experience increasing, but I felt like it was a lot easier for me to hit my shots on moving targets while using this launcher. However, I will come back to this down the line in the video to see if I really do prefer the iron bomber over the regular grenade launcher. So currently in the challenge, we're sitting at 14.5 hours in, and we've reached 200,000 damage so far. At this point, we have approximately 58 hours left to go, which means for the next 5 days, I'll need to play TF2 for 11.5 hours each day. I really need to find some way to speed things up. Now, I have no idea whether this will speed things up or not, but this sure is a different loadout. The main thing I'm excited about with this loadout is the Scottish resistance. I don't know why, but being able to choose what stickies I can explode is very appealing to me. But who knows, that might just change down the line. For my first game of this loadout, I loaded back into Scar's 24/7 2-4 server to get a good feel for the Scottish resistance. And to be honest, it was pretty damn good at spawn camping. But a man can only sit there aimlessly clicking his mouse for so long. So I decided to get out the loose cannon and give that a go. And that's when this happened. Oh, jamming!
We traded!
The sound I got from that was insane. That was me trading with my friend who was in the lobby at the time. This was my first ever double dunk. And this sound right here, whoo, was so damn satisfying to hear. Something about this sound made the gun feel so good to use. Having some kind of audio and visual feedback for a shot that just hits your enemy in a certain way definitely makes the gun very rewarding to use. I would for sure be giving the loose cannon just as much use as the Scottish resistance, if not even more, which I was not expecting to do at all. Another thing that's great about the loose cannon is the fact that you can knock back your enemies. This is especially useful against classes like Pyro and Heavy, and I'll touch on this again in the future. After about 2 hours, I had managed to get to 230,000 damage. At this point in the day, it was getting relatively late, and I've been playing TF2 for about 8 hours straight, so I decided to call it a night. To recap, at 16.5 hours, we had 230,000 damage. Let's see if we can improve that number by at least 100,000 damage tomorrow. All right, day 3. Let's see how fast we can get to 300k. We only have 70,000 damage to get in order to reach our next milestone, which is a lot less damage than we put in yesterday. So surely we can pull that off today, right? Well, let's find out. For my first few games of day 3, I went back into some more casual matches. Now, I mentioned before the knockback on the loose cannon. Well, this knockback feature was definitely making itself useful today. I managed to get a good amount of use out of it, especially while getting myself out of sticky situations, as you can see here. It was also working really well against classes like the Heavy and Pyros. As well as a couple demo nights. This would definitely help me while pushing fights with my team. For example, like this clip on Egypt, while trying to make it onto a point where there's an Ubered Heavy standing there holding the entrance. The knockback, combined with the faster projectile speed and satisfying double dunk, made the loose cannon a very strong choice of weaponry for me. As far as the Scottish resistance goes, it definitely does what it's intended to do. Well, what I think it's intended for. And that's spawn camping. But again, I found myself leaning more towards using the loose cannon, especially when I was able to hit clips like this. Oh my god! I just got a million double dongs. What the fuck? As well as it just being a more reliable way of killing enemies, like Pyros when they're all up in your grill. At this point, I had spent 3.5 hours playing in casual matches, and I thought I was doing pretty well, but that was not the case. I decided to check my damage on hour 20, and we were only sitting at 270k, which I was thinking at this point in the challenge, we would be a little further along. So I thought it would be best to finally switch back to Skyle, so we could speed up our damage output by again mitigating those pesky respawn timers. And right back in I went to continue getting my damage up. After about 2.5 hours playing on Skyle, we managed to reach our goal of 300k, with a loadout that I genuinely had a lot of fun using. The loose cannon with its ability to knock back enemies in close ranges is something I can definitely appreciate as a new demo man. It makes taking fights in close ranges not only easier, but also even more rewarding when you can knock a player away and then finish them off with a second blow. Also, that satisfying double dunk adding another level of finesse to this launcher. As for the Scottish resistance, well, it definitely put in some work for me, that's for sure. I used it quite a bit to trap enemies in their spawns, which was a really efficient way of getting damage damage very quickly. The thing is, you can only do that for so long. If anything, having this loadout made me feel more confident using a grenade launcher like the loose cannon over something like the sticky launcher. So at the end of day 3, and after 6 hours of playtime for the day, we had reached a total of 22.5 hours played, and we had just hit 300,000 damage. At this rate, we would have to continue playing for another 52 hours over the next 4 days, which is roughly 13 hours a day to finish the achievement. This is actually a step back on our daily time compared to yesterday. So let's see if this next loadout can change things around for us. For our next loadout, I went with the Lock and Load, the Tide Turner, and the Islander. Okay, so this achievement is for 1 million blast damage to enemies, and the Tide Turner does no blast damage at all. So why is it in this loadout? Well, you see, I wanted to try a class with a little bit more mobility to it, and to see whether or not rotating to and away from fights would be worth swapping out a secondary launcher for. As for the Lock and Load, well, that has a 25% faster projectile speed than the normal grenade launcher. However, having a few drawbacks with that, including not having rollers, which are grenades that continue to roll on the floor after you miss a target, which can sometimes result in you getting a kill anyways. Not only that, it also has a smaller explosion radius and a smaller clip size of only 3 grenades versus other grenade launchers having 4 projectiles. This was definitely going to be a stranger loadout than what we've seen so far, but I wanted to try and use all of the possible loadout combos I could so that I can make a decision on what the best loadout is for damage as Demo Man. With that out of the way, I jumped back in for the start of day 4. I started off in a casual match on Dust Bowl, and things weren't really going too well for me at the start of the day. Oh my goodness. This also continued for the next couple of games as well. Fuck. Bro, what? But after switching back to 2-4, things seemed to pick up a bit. I started to actually hit my shots, and the rust started to come off my aim, which was definitely a welcome change compared to the previous games we've had. I even managed to hit some air shots as well. Oh, air shot. After about an hour and a half, I had reached 320,000 damage, and we had officially made it to the 24-hour mark in the challenge. I had been going at this challenge for a whole 24 hours, and we were only just a third of the way there. Let's just hope I can pull my finger out of my arse and get a move on in this thing in the next few days. On the upside, however, I did manage to find a few use cases for the Tide Turner. It was particularly useful when I got myself into those sticky situations where I either needed to reload or I bit off a little more than I could chew by pushing too many enemies at once. And I got some pretty clean kills using it too. Oh, that was clean. One thing I do want to mention at this point is that my aim has actually gotten noticeably better since the start of the challenge. The faster projectile speed of the Lock and Load may also be helping with that as well. But for the most part, I'm definitely hitting more shots on a more consistent basis. Okay, except here. We don't talk about that, okay? But for real though, classes like the Scout have become a lot less of an issue for me, and I seem to be holding my composure more in fights due to the fact that I'm feeling a bit more confident in my aim. Another 3.5 hours had passed, and I have reached 370,000 damage. It was at this point that I realized that the Lock and Load was probably my least favorite launcher so far. It just felt like a worse version of the Iron Bomber, to be honest. Sure, the increased projectile speed was nice, but the amount of drawbacks this gun had for that projectile speed increase just wasn't worth it, especially after just coming off the loose cannon, which also had a faster projectile speed than stock, but was just way more satisfying to use. And it had rollers and the double dong feature as well. So this gun just kind of felt like a chore to use in comparison. After about another 2.5 hours, we had reached 400k, taking us to a total of 30 hours of this challenge so far. Only 100k more until we reach the halfway mark, boys. To recap this loadout, I would say that its strong suit was definitely the mobility that the Tide Turner added, but it wasn't used enough for it to be worth giving up a secondary weapon for. As previously mentioned, the Lock and Load was probably my least favorite launcher so far. Having all those drawbacks, it just wasn't worth the increased projectile speed. And the Islander, okay, that was just there for a little bit of fun for me to use when I got bored. I just did a full battle in a hallway with another Demo Man. Sick. Okay, here's what I decided to go with for our next loadout. The Iron Bomber, the Sticky Jumper, and the Frying Pan. At this point, we had just run out of guns to use, which made our final gun in this challenge the Sticky Jumper. And to be honest, this seemed like a pretty solid option for us to use, especially since we're looking for something to give us a little bit more mobility. But let's see how useful it is in practice. For my grenade launcher, I opted for the Iron Bomber, as to me, it felt like the most consistent grenade launcher I've used so far, and I really wanted to test and see if it could potentially be my main launcher for the rest of the challenge. Now, with the loadout sorted, I decided to go back into Scar's 2-Fort server and start using this combo. All right, I'm excited for this one. Let's see how this goes. I haven't used this before, actually. Okay. Oh, Oh, dude, it feels so good to be able to just jump around again. Holy crap. First of all, I found the sticky jumper really enjoyable to use, especially since I hadn't been able to jump around the map for such a long time. And the fact that I took no blast damage while using it was also a really nice bonus too. I quickly found that it was really good for pushing fights as well as taking control of the enemy's battlements on 2 fort, as you can see here. It was also just simply nice to use for rotating around the map and to get away from fights. Speaking of things that I was missing, rollers. I didn't realize how much I needed rollers until now. The amount of potential damage I was missing out on while not having them is actually insane. I could have potentially been dealing damage even after missing shots, like in this clip here. Oh, it feels good to have rollers again, dude. So switching back to the Iron Bomber was definitely a good choice. So far with this loadout, things were going really well, and I was actually getting consistent damage for once, which is exactly what I needed at this point. But after about 2 hours and a total of 32 hours playing, I checked how much damage I had, which I only managed to get to 430,000 damage. So at this stage, it looks like we have around 42.5 hours left of the challenge, if we continue at this pace, which is roughly 21 hours a day for the next 2 days of just playing TF2. This challenge was seeming like it was going to be more and more impossible to complete in time before I got my puppy. So let's just hope that something can change in these next 2 days. And at this point, I'd been playing TF2 for 10 hours straight, so I decided it would be a good time to call it for the night. On day 5, things actually started to pick up quite nicely. My shots were more accurate, and I just felt way more comfortable using a grenade launcher in general, especially because it had been so long since I've used a sticky launcher that I could deal damage with. I was actually getting pretty good at predicting enemy movement, which meant hitting more shots and, well, dealing a lot more damage. Holy, the damage! Holy shit. After about 4 hours on this morning, I ended up getting 70,000 damage, which is insanely fast compared to our previous days. For example, yesterday, in 2 hours, we only had 30k. So if we doubled that, then in 4 hours at that pace, we would be at 60,000 damage. That's already a 10k damage increase. And this game right here is a clear example of our progress so far, where I managed to get 13,000 damage in one game. And not to mention this game too, where I was able to get to 10k. That's definitely the progress I've been looking for. This 70k damage took our total to 500k, which meant we were finally at the halfway point in this challenge. With that goal being met, and now we had run out of new guns to switch to, it was time for me to decide what loadout I think would be the most effective for our damage output, and that I'll probably be using for the rest of the challenge. All right, boys, we just hit 500k damage. Halfway there, I am switching back to stock. Well, I'm getting the sticky launcher back. And to celebrate, I'm becoming a sticky bomb. Oh yeah, I'm looking sticky. Boys, I'm about to go crazy with this thing I haven't had in so long. Now, I'm sure a lot of you TF2 veterans are very surprised by this loadout. But yes, I decided to pretty much go for stock demo. Except instead of the regular grenade launcher, I opted for the Iron Bomber. And for my secondary weapon, I went for the regular sticky launcher. This was the loadout I was going to try and use for the rest of the challenge. To celebrate the return of the sticky launcher, I decided to create myself a themed outfit, which eventually became so iconic that I had people copying my style in game. Yeah, this Brody guy definitely trying to steal my my flow. Wait, does he even have the sandals on too? He does.
Are they not the same part of the same fit?
No, like that's just what I put on my character. He's put the same fit on.
Apparently people do that.
What the hell? Okay, but man, did it feel good having this thing back. With my timing of stickies being better than it was to begin with, it was definitely very refreshing being able to use the stock sticky launcher again, especially when I could do things like this. Holy shit! My overall prediction of where to place stickies was improved, as well as my trigger finger while using the launcher. And also having moments like these where I could just click my right mouse button and just be able to get a kill. Oh, okay. As far as the Iron Bomber goes, well, my experience with this thing was pretty extensive, as I've used it quite a bit so far throughout this challenge. Was it my main choice of launcher? Honestly, I don't know. It felt very similar to the stock launcher, besides the rollers taking less time to explode and grenades having less bounce. I'm very 50-50 on whether that's something I prefer. It's very situational and both have their advantages, but something about the slightly faster fuse time felt a little more consistent to me. One thing I do need to mention is the difference between the sticky jumper and the sticky launcher. Obviously, the self-inflicted inflicted blast damage is one thing that is significantly different between the two. I found myself using the sticky launcher a lot less for rotation around the map, simply because I would end up with half my health left after just one jump. And that was one place where the sticky jumper really shined. And obviously that's the purpose. But I was happy to give up that little bit of rotation for the damage I could deal with the sticky launcher, especially with it being paired with another grenade launcher. But with that being said, the sticky bomber still definitely had its moments for me, like this one right here.
Oh my god.
Things were moving along quite well, as I was somewhat accustomed to these two weapons, and my damage output was increasing more and more every game. I was also hitting some pretty nasty clips too.
Holy fuck, I'm going off. I just cleared this whole area for us, by the way.
With all of this improvement, it actually ended up leading to our fastest time at hitting 100,000 damage. It took me only 5 hours to finally reach 600k, and I think it simply came down to this loadout being one of the strongest, if not the strongest loadout I've used in a while. I was really happy with this progress so far, but I knew I could take things a little further. It was time for me to step things up in terms of my in-game performance. I would have to do everything possible to get all the damage that I can, even if that means I can no longer spare friendlies on 2 forward. Yeah, that's right, no one's safe anymore. For the next 100,000 damage, I pretty much ended up only using the sticky launcher exclusively. I don't exactly know why, but it may be just because it was a comfortable choice for me. And at this point in the challenge, we were 41 hours in, with not much time left at all. So I think subconsciously, I just went with an option that I was 100% confident in my ability to deal damage with. But with that being said, the sticky launcher definitely put in work for the next few hours, racking up a total of 100,000 damage in only 4 hours. That's an hour faster than our previous 100k. Okay, now we were really moving through this challenge. And yes, that's right, we actually hit 200k in one day. It did take us 13 hours, but we managed to reach 700,000 damage. We had a total of 300,000 damage remaining, and only one more day left to acquire it. With that being said, this took us to hour 45 in the challenge so far, and I've been playing TF2 for 13 hours straight, so I decided to hit the hay and get a good night's rest before our final day on this challenge. Let's see if we can get 300,000 damage tomorrow. Day 6, the final day before I get my puppy. For the next 100k damage, I decided to switch back to the stock grenade launcher, simply just to compare the two so I would have a fresh comparison in my head. Especially after just coming from the iron bomber, I would be able to easily compare how each felt to use. So let's find out which of the two of these is better, shall we? At the 600 to 700,000 damage mark, the sticky launcher became the primary weapon for me to use. But here, on the start of our final day, I began using the grenade launcher again, and it actually became just as much use to me as the sticky launcher was, especially in situations like this.
Yeah.
Oh, good shit. Oh, holy fuck, you just killed everyone.
They were standing still, okay? It wasn't crazy. They were just standing
No,
there.
it's okay. It's okay. Crazy.
When there's a bunch of enemies in one area, it makes it very easy to get a heap of damage in a matter of seconds. And not to mention when there's also crits involved as well. The improvement I'm seeing in these clips watching them back is night and day. From missing 90% of my shots at the beginning of this challenge with the grenade launcher to hitting clips like this.
Oh my god, I just went crazy. Holy shit, the kill feed. Oh my goodness, the kill feed.
It's definitely very cool to see how far I've come in such a little amount of time. Well, it didn't seem like a small amount of time for me at this point, but in retrospect, from a player that is coming back to the game and had no experience with demo, I would say my ability with the class has definitely increased tenfold since starting. Things like sticky placement, crosshair placement, player prediction, and overall game sense and coordination in fights has already shown major strides, as well as my experience dealing with scouts and pyros, which has become so much better, to the point where I don't even feel like they're a threat anymore, simply because I can now trust my aim and player prediction using the grenade launcher. And if that doesn't work well, then I have my sticky launcher to clean up the fight. I spent a lot of time for this first portion of the day on 2 fort, and that was definitely a smart choice, because for some reason everyone on the enemy team all decided they wanted to stay in large groups and in smaller areas of the map, which meant a bunch of easy damage for me. Not to mention all the friendlies inside the sewers that were just sitting there waiting to be killed. I'm sorry. With that being said, it took me roughly 5 hours, but we made it to 800k damage. With a solid start behind me for the day, it wasn't the quickest 100k we had got, but I was pretty confident I could pick up the damage as I played more throughout the day. Only 200k left until we finally complete this challenge. I decided to switch back to the iron bomber for the rest of the challenge at this point, as I found the short fuse time on the grenades just felt a bit more convenient in more situations than the grenades on the stock grenade launcher. Now that I've been playing for a few hours, I started to really get a flow down, and the damage was rolling in faster than ever. In 3 hours and 45 minutes, we hit 900k. That knocked 15 minutes off our previous best time. At this point in the night, I was getting super tired, but I was so close to the end, and I had to get this challenge done tonight. So I pressed on and continued getting my damage up. The difference in how demo felt to play now compared to the start of the challenge was so significantly different. I felt super confident, and everything to do with the class just felt like it came super easy to me now. My shots were just hitting without having to think about it too much, and I became more relaxed while playing, which is really nice right now, especially because I was so damn tired. I spent most of my time for this last segment of the challenge on 2 Fort to maximize the amount of damage coming in. To be honest, I was just aimlessly playing at this point. I couldn't even watch the tracker on the screen. I needed this challenge to be done. Every kill I got, I was waiting to hear the achievement notification. But as it got later and later into the night, I was feeling less and less confident that I was going to get this achievement done in time. And the thought of getting some much needed sleep was seeming more pleasing to me by the second. That was until... Oh, I did it, dude. Oh my god. Finally. That took so fucking long, holy. It took an additional 2 hours and 45 minutes, but we hit 1 million damage. It only took 56.5 hours of playing only demo to achieve it, but it was finally done. This challenge was a lot of fun to do. Sure, at the time of filming it felt pretty grueling, but now that it was done, I'm super happy I did it. Not only have I managed to get one of the hardest achievements in the game, I've also found a new love for the demo man, which I honestly wasn't expecting to happen, and I won't be letting this experience I've gotten throughout the challenge go to waste. With what I've learned throughout this video, I'm definitely going to be using demo a lot more. But there is one thing we can't forget. The puppy. You think I'm just going to talk about getting a puppy in this video and not show it to you? So this is Bailey, and yes, she's grown this damn much since I've been working on this video, which is insane. All right, put you down. If you've enjoyed what you've seen today and want to see more, be sure to subscribe. I've got more coming very, very soon, so keep an eye out for that. Thanks for watching.